Hello and welcome. Today we're going to make an open-faced roast beef sandwich. The methods used are pretty much the same as the open-faced turkey sandwich we did a while ago, so because of that we're going to focus on the roux and how to make it add more flavor to your dish in addition to thickening. So first, a thank you to everyone who has subscribed and has been watching and sharing the videos. It is a great help to the channel and I truly appreciate it. And if you're not already subscribed and you enjoy the video, subscribe for more like this. For this recipe, we're going to need 2 cups of beef broth, thick cut roast beef luncheon meat, 2 pieces of sliced bread per sandwich, and 3 tablespoons of butter, or any fat really, plus 3 tablespoons of flour. So today I'm going to be foregoing the butter in this step. The reason I'm doing this is because I have a bag of beef trimmings. I save all the trimmings from whatever I'm cooking in small bags and freeze them. So in this case, I made a roast a bit ago and I had a bag full of beef trimmings from that we're going to use to make the gravy. As long as I stay in the medium-low while I'm cooking this part, you only need to stir it about every 5 or 8 minutes, somewhere in there. It's going to take about 20 minutes. That's what it took after mine completely defrosted. Mine was still frozen, and so it took about an extra 10 minutes or so about 30 minutes to get it rendered out. If yours is still frozen like mine, about 20 minutes if it's not. Once it is mostly rendered out, it's going to be looking like this. At this point, I turn it up to medium, while the larger pieces ended up deep frying a little bit. All the little pieces I pull out so that they don't burn. These larger pieces will take probably about 5 minutes before they get fully crispy. And once you remove those now crispy pieces at the very end like this, you can actually put them on a plate lined with a paper towel and sprinkle some salt on them, and they're kind of like homemade pork rinds at that point, except beef in this case. And they actually work as a nice snack. Which is kind of great because it means this really is a zero waste thing. So if we were to be using the butter I have listed in the ingredients for the roux, your roux is going to end up being much thicker than this one's going to be at first. It is a more 1-to-1 ratio doing it that way, where we're going to end up with slightly thinner roux because we will have substantially more than 3 tablespoons of fat from our trimmings. It doesn't matter which version you're doing though, the mechanics are the same. You need to slowly add the flour to the fat or melted butter, and if you add too much at once or add any before the last part's fully mixed in, you could possibly get clumping. So you want to take your time here and make sure everything's fully mixed in as you slowly add a little bit and then slowly add a little bit. Since you can only guess the amount of flour you're going to need if you're using fat rendered from scraps like this, it's always better to err on the side of less flour. I started with 3 tablespoons, and then by the end of it I had used 4 tablespoons. We're going to be making a dark roux today, and that means it will not thicken as much as a light roux would, such as we used in the open-faced turkey episode. The basic rule is the darker your roux, the less it's going to thicken, but conversely the more it's going to add to the sauce or gravy's flavor. There will be a slightly nuttier flavor and a far darker color by doing this. If you're using a thin roux like I'm making here, you do need to be aware that as soon as you add the beef broth, it's going to get absorbed immediately and it's going to turn into a paste instantly, and it's going to get massively thicker. From there though, you just need to do like the other one we did with the light roux, and we just have to start adding our broth slowly, make sure it's all mixed in, add a little more broth slowly, make sure it's all mixed in, and just keep doing that until you've got probably about 3/4 of it mixed in, and at that point you're probably okay to just pour the rest in. My camera's battery ran out about 1/4 of the way through the adding the liquid part. Thankfully though, I still have the footage from the turkey episode to show the process of adding and mixing till smooth until we have about 2/3 of the liquid in. Once you get there, usually it's thin enough to pour the rest in the broth without fear of clumping, but if yours seems a little thick, you can always just keep adding just a little bit at a time. Once all the broth is in, return it to a boil and then turn it down to low to simmer until it begins to re-thicken up. This is where you're also going to want to take a taste and make sure there's enough flavor and seasoning. If it has enough salt but still kind of tastes bland to you, about 1/4 teaspoon each of garlic and onion powder and black pepper will probably fix that. Because we used broth, it should be salty enough, but if it's not, you'll probably only want to add just a little bit of salt, no more than 1/4 teaspoon. Once it thickens up, the perception of the saltiness is going to increase, so it could end up being a little too much if you add more than that. Once the gravy looks like it is thickened a bit, we need to check to see if it's reached the nappe stage. Nappe in this context means that when you clean the section of, when you wipe down the back of the spoon with your finger, the 2 sections of liquid will not readily flow back together. Once it tests good on that, it's good, and you just need to cool it for about 10 minutes before serving. This is going to thicken more as it cools, and overnight in the refrigerator if you refrigerate it. It'll loosen back up when heated, so you don't have to worry if it seems like it got too thick. Once our gravy's cooled a bit, we only need to plate our ingredients and we are done. We just need to cut our bread corner to corner. Once done, place the small ends inwards like so. This placement works a little bit better with bread that's more square like sandwich bread because it breads a little easier. After that, a layer of heated or unheated roast beef. If you were doing this version, I would definitely go with the heated roast beef. 30 seconds in the microwave is perfect for that. And then, of course, the gravy waterfall. Go slowly from the center and then add to the places where the natural flow of gravy didn't reach and where you want that sort of cascading overflow effect, such as the bottom and top tips on mine here. So I also added a sprinkle of parsley flakes. I'm going to add a little celery flake and some fresh cracked pepper. The celery flake's a little woody, so maybe don't do that one, although I do like the flavor, which is why I did it. But since I did have the longer sort of placement, it allowed me to get the deviled egg potato salad that I made to go with it right next to it on the same plate, even though it takes up most of the plate. Now, for our second serving suggestion, when I started making this recipe, I told my fiance about how this sometimes gets confused with the hot beef sandwich. That uses a chunk of roast beef rather than slices and has an added scoop of mashed potatoes. We will actually be making that sometime in the future. But from that, she got the idea to add her potato salad on top and give that a try. Her thinking went that they had similar elements to the mashed potatoes, but they also had the vinegar in the potato salad to help cut some of the richness from the gravy down and make it a little more balanced of a meal, and it actually worked fabulously. If you do this, both her and I do suggest leave the roast beef cold, because at that point the hot, cold, and rich versus acidic pairings will stand out more, and that makes it sort of more than the sum of its individual parts. And with that, we have made a open-faced roast beef sandwich. These would actually have been typical of a 1950s boxcar diner style, usually found on the East and West Coast. Middle America was a little bit more about that hot beef sandwich that we're going to make in the future. So at these diners in the coastal areas, they would always be already be serving sandwiches, turkey, roast beef, those kind of things. Roast beef was a very popular lunch meat at the time. And of course, you already had gravy for the mashed potatoes sitting around, so you just repurposed that and bam, you got yourself an open-faced roast beef sandwich. So that's what we got. Alright, and with that, we have finished our dish. So, as always, I hope you have a great day and a great meal.